order to keep us on track time-wise, I'm going to ask us to get back to our seats. All right. Thank you. It's been a great morning of learning. In a moment, Dr. Penny Roberts is going to share with us some of her work with older adults. Dr. Roberts holds degrees in piano pedagogy and music therapy and earned her PhD in aging studies at Tulane University. She brings more than 10 years of experience in music therapy in hospice and palliative care, oncology, and children and adolescents with special needs. She co-authored the Individualized Music Therapy Assessment Profile and has authored book chapters and published several papers on the role of music in alternative medicine interventions. Dr. Roberts currently partners with a variety of cultural institutions in the New Orleans area, including the Louisiana Philharmonic Orchestra, the Louisiana State Museum, and the Southern Repertoire Theater to provide cultural engagement opportunities for older adults and those with special needs and disenfranchised groups. Please put your hands together for Dr. Roberts.
From your break. And I'm excited today to talk to you about the work that I've been doing in New Orleans. And I have this fancy clicker up here, which does a spotlight kind of thing. So, oh no, that's not it. Oh-ho!
I didn't get to play with that, is all I'm going to say.
It's available for your use. You're the director and all, so I'm sure they'll make some accommodations for you. Okay, now I need to press play, Sharon. Oh, there's a thingy. Haha. Okay. So this is your, I think I can. Okay. So, as some of you may be aware of, the population in America is aging as well as globally. And we're really finding out a lot more information as the data from the 2010 census becomes available. So one thing that struck me particularly, and this was just in the paper and on the news this week, was that for the first time in history, by the year 2035, older people will outnumber children for the first time in the United States. So this is a big demographic shift that we're experiencing right now and that we as professionals need to be prepared to address. This is just a graphic that tells you that a little bit more. So you can see here, I could use the spotlight, y'all. Woo! All right, so here we are down here, projected number overall, and older adults are in blue. Everybody else, basically, 18 and under, are in red here. So you can see that we are really experiencing this shift in real time. We know it's coming, and we're trying to figure out how to adapt to these changes at the same time. All right. Where do these older adults live? Where are they? They're everywhere. If you look at this map, and this is again from the Census Bureau, you can tell the darker the color, the more aging older adults that we have in that area. So they're pretty much everywhere, with a couple of exceptions there in the West. But in generally, it's not only, again, nationwide, but it's global. And we're preparing to help folks as we can see fit. And I wanted to particularly show just here in Boston that the demographics are changing not only in age, but also in cultural and ethnicity specifics as well. So as we have more changing border situations and that kind of thing, we need to understand who are these older adults and how can we best serve them. So I realized as I was preparing that the title of my presentation is like who, what, when, where, why, like blood type, shoe size, all that. So bear with me as I try to get through the what. That was the who. And it struck me when I finished my PhD, it was an interdisciplinary PhD in aging studies. And that's a great word, interdisciplinary. And what I soon discovered was that as much as we all want to participate in that, we're not really sure what that means. When the rubber meets the road, what is interdisciplinary? But truthfully, it's when different kinds of people work together and collaborating to share their expertise, their life experiences, their knowledge to positively impact patient care. But be aware at the same time that this terminology is changing. Sometimes now we're hearing multidisciplinary, multi-specialty, team collaboration, IDT, so on and so forth. As I'm using the word interdisciplinary, this is what I mean here. All of us working together to positively impact patient care. Interdisciplinary collaboration is now required in all research, in my opinion, and in interventions as well, specifically with this aging population. We're doing a great job globally of getting people to live longer, and that means that they're going to be sick longer. That's just the nature of the beast, right? So with this more complex diagnoses that are happening with our older adults, we also need to have, as professionals, more complex skill sets. How do we then care for these folks who have often comorbid conditions that we need to be able to address independently and holistically at the same time? So again, with the what, the truth is that we all want to work together. I think that we all have the best of intentions, but we don't often speak the same language. So I'll share with you this example on the bottom, significant versus insignificant, or significant versus significant. So when I went back for my PhD, I was a music therapist. I've been practicing for several years, and I went back and wound up working in a neuroscience lab with rats and numbers and graphs, and my advisor was a very well-known neuroscience publisher. Like I was completely out of my element for a long time. And one of the first graphs that I was showing him from a trial that I had run, he was telling about the difference and how I'd done it and this and that. I'll never forget. And he was leaning over my shoulder and he said, "Is it significant?" And I said, "It is so significant." I mean, this is really making a difference. Okay, we wanted the same thing for sure, but when he used the word significant, that's not how I was using the word significant. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that and differences in perception and jargon and grammar as we go forward. My PhD was really linking the idea of animal enrichment with older adults enrichment. And so first I have to talk a little bit about what environmental enrichment is. It actually started with the Animal Welfare Act, and that was making sure that laboratory animals, animals in zoos, so on and so forth, have an enriched environment. And as studies became available, it breaks down to basically three elements. That's what environmental enrichment is. The first is physical exercise. And speakers earlier talked about the opportunity and the choices. The opportunity for physical exercise here is what's really important. The ability to do so if you choose, and to not if you so choose. Novelty, meaning that not everything is the same all the time. We need something new to stimulate our creative juices, and it's really important for brain health and development as well. And last, those social engagement opportunities. Notice here the word opportunities because we don't want to force anybody to be involved with anything or anyone they don't wish to be. And so if we're talking about animals, this means just having more than one cage mate in laboratory rats, for example, or having a mate or a partner in a zoo. So having this awareness and ability of these different types of elements of environmental enrichment is really important going forward. Continuing with the difference between cultural engagement, now we've talked about environmental enrichment, cultural engagement, and creative arts therapies. And here I mean music therapy, art therapy, dance therapy, drama therapy, all of that good stuff that we are like-minded about. Engagement just means the improvement of well-being and some improvement in resilience. And resilience means here, in general, resilience is the ability to withstand threat, whether that's an emotional change, a psychological shift, a social change, being able to be resilient to those changes and challenges in life. Whereas therapy is a specific intervention to relieve or heal a disorder. And those differences are really important. They're not the same thing. It's important that we acknowledge that. All right, so now moving on to the why. Well, the good news is that cultural engagement is now being studied in a very rigorous and scientific way, and we're seeing lots of great outcomes from it. None of us who are practitioners are surprised by this, right? But now the science is supporting what our observations have been all this time. One of the studies that came out that used the English, the English longitudinal study of aging. This was just published in 2019 in the Journal of Gerontology. And it found that older adults who participated in cultural engagement activities, and here this was museum attendance and theater attendance, actually had a dose-response relationship in their progression of frailty, both in new diagnoses of frailty and also in progression of already existing frailty. Frailty is, again, about being able to be resilient. It's coming to your homeostasis when you are stressed. How do you get back to that? And frailty is now a clinical indicator of several different things, vulnerability, prognosis, those sorts of things. Cultural engagement has also been shown to positively affect depression in older adults. Those of us who work in this community are very familiar with that comorbidity of aging and depression. And this is frequency of cultural engagement. Again, it's dose responsive here, and the risk of developing depression. So it had a protective effect. And then many of us are familiar with the Cohen et al. Study from 2006 that talked about health indicators. So this also was about cultural engagement opportunities, and they found a whole host of positive impacts in older adults, including that older adults who participated in cultural engagement activities took less medication. They fell less frequently. They had better indices of loneliness and morale. And in this, the intervention group, there was actually an increase toward more activity. There was a trend. There was a trend toward increased activity. So they perhaps were not as active when they began the study, but then they wanted to do more. It caused them to be more engaged as they went along versus the control group who experienced a decrease in activity. So more about the why. As we're caring for this aging population that I mentioned in the very beginning, there is an increased movement towards quality control. And we're seeing this in the way that we gather data in healthcare companies, in hospice facilities, in hospitals, so on and so forth. Quality control and quality management. So how can we prove what's working? And at the same time as there are more specific diagnoses in our older adults, we as academics, as researchers, as educators, as interventionists are also acquiring very specific knowledge. And while this is fantastic, it means that the knowledge of the healthcare providers of the patient is fragmented. So as a music therapist, I may know how my patient responds in music therapy, but have no idea how he or she does in physical therapy or in occupational therapy. And in truth, then, I, nor none of the other practitioners, have a full understanding of this patient in a very holistic way. There's an increasing need or awareness of the need for multidisciplinary care. It's in the newspapers, in the online, it's everywhere now about how impactful creative arts therapies are. And that the mind and body spirit, surprise everybody, actually has an impact on your health. Right, yeah, thanks y'all, thanks. We've known that for a while. All right, so now the when. Okay, so as mentioned a few minutes ago, there is a dose-dependent relationship, meaning that the more cultural engagement, the better. Well, I don't know about you, but when I get home at the end of the day, it's hard for me to change clothes and go to a concert. It's hard for me to change and go to the ballet. You have to get in the car, you have to, right? There's a dose-response relationship. However, we have to think about the principle of self-efficacy, which was mentioned earlier in different language. And this is really a concept that comes from social work literature. And this talks about the ability to manipulate your environment for your own positive benefit. So if it's not to my positive benefit to do this, this, or that, I need to be able to maintain that choice. So this is why we don't put rodents, for example, on that wheel thing and make them run anymore. They have the choice to get on and they have the choice to get off. It's the same thing with us. We want to be able to get on our own wheel and get off it when we're ready. All right. And this is especially important if we're talking about physical limitations with older adults. So if we are engaged in some kind of movement activity, that older adult needs to say, you know what, I'm done with this. My arm hurts, my leg hurts, whatever. This isn't for me. All right. In turning to how now, there are a variety of interventions that fall into the idea of cultural engagement, a plethora. As we talked about earlier with Dr. DeMaio, choirs and chorale, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, and volunteer orchestras. We were talking earlier about how many folks in medical professions are actually musicians as well. Well, let's give them the opportunity for this cultural engagement. Here's an example of an older adult choir. So this lady has her arms raised. I imagine she doesn't do that in the rest of her life. There's the physical engagement opportunity. There are, I could use a spotlight, y'all. Woo! There are other adults behind her for that social portion of cultural engagement. And additionally, no matter what they do, no matter what we as therapists do, the music is not going to be the same from one moment to the next. The participants aren't going to be the same. The time of day is not going to be the same. The key might even be different, right? There's your novelty. How do we change and access those three conditions of environmental enrichment as we apply it to cultural engagement? But visual arts are also important. Those of us who go to museums regularly, you gotta walk all over the place. You gotta see what you wanna see. There's your physical engagement. There are other adults engaging with you in that same moment for your social stimulation, and everything is new all the time. We never know what's gonna be there. Who will this artist be? Who will be attending with me? So again, all three elements are really important. And then there are lots of folks doing research into memoir writing. That's hard for people from the South, memoir writing, and crafting. And it's important here, this is an example of a memoir writing class. Lots of social stimulation going on, lots of novelty, and some exercise. Writing uses very different fine motor skills than the rest of our lives require. The last thing I want to mention is the idea of crafting, and again, bringing it back to the idea of cultural changes in every area. I'm from New Orleans, and one of the meaningful things that adults in our area do is crafting Mardi Gras costumes. So there's a population of Mardi Gras Indians that are very important to New Orleans culture, and they spend one Mardi Gras to the next Mardi Gras crafting these costumes. These are all hand beaded. So imagine the fine motor control that it takes. They get together and socialize with other adults, and who knows what beads are going to be available when. So again, all three elements involved here. So just telling you quickly about a few of the projects I've been very fortunate to be involved with as I strive to provide more cultural engagement opportunities for adults in New Orleans. NOMC is the New Orleans Musicians Clinic. This clinic takes care of musicians in New Orleans in every possible way that they can. And I was fortunate to be involved in this partnership with Southern Rep Theater. Southern Rep renovated an old church in New Orleans, and it became their sanctuary space. Get it? Sanctuary church, sanctuary, right? Okay, so this is the Southern Rep Theater, and here is one of the pictures of the first engagement opportunity that we had. There's a ton of people here, right? All of these folks are getting to know each other as they're about to experience this cultural opportunity. So remember, I'm a music therapist who comes in with this idea of what this is going to be. The next thing that I saw at this opportunity was this. Wait, y'all brought in Reiki? During a concert? Why, yes, we did. And then we have the choice to listen to the concert or to be involved in Reiki. This is a photo of an actual chair massage happening while the band is playing. So I had to adjust my expectations of what is concert behavior. How do we attend a concert versus how do you want to attend this concert? What will work for you? The next one is a collaboration between Louisiana State Museum and Preservation Hall, which is a very important cultural organization in New Orleans that really strives to protect the tradition and culture and music of New Orleans. And this was also, I was very lucky to partner with Loyola University, where I teach music therapy. And this was particularly for older adults with special needs. So in this photo, you can see the band is behind them. They're playing. And these guys are doing their own thing. This is what needs to happen for me right now. And this is even more obvious in this photo where they went for it. They went in and they became a part of the band themselves. The band was very willing to let them come up and sing and dance and participate and be engaged. All right, and there's one of my students from Loyola University, really making sure that we are all participating with each other, that social element is strong, not only amongst themselves, but novelty, meeting new people. All right, and then the last one is my most recent collaboration, and this is with Louisiana State Museum and PACE, which stands for Program for All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. And this is one of those organizations that was mentioned earlier that's like an adult daycare center. What's different here is that the PACE model actually has all of physicians' appointments there at the center. A bus comes around, it's fabulous. A bus comes around and picks everybody up and takes you to the center, and they're your physicians. There's your occupational therapy. There's your physical therapy. There's your music therapy, right? And then they take them home at the end of the day. So really aging in place is their model that they're focusing on. We partnered with Louisiana State Museum to create a class for older adults in printmaking. Okay, I'm a music therapist. I don't know anything about printmaking, but I'm going to sit right there and learn with everybody else. And these are very telling. This is one of the first photos that we were able to take. And the lady here, ooh, yeah, there it is actually an occupational therapist from PACE. So again, this is that interdisciplinary action that we were talking about earlier. Lots of different photos here of older adults working in a very specific way that is engaged in a cultural activity. And this one I love because the lady in blue had asked me, what do you think of my drawing? And I was like, I think it's fabulous, it's beautiful, it's all these things. And she was like, what do you think about it, right? Her peer is more important than I, as it should be. So great, this sounds fabulous. I feel like I've won all y'all over. Now how do we do it? What's the how of this? Sounds great. A few things I've learned. The first is that community partnerships are invaluable. Knowing the groups in your environment who care about the things that we care about and are willing to be interdisciplinary as they work with you. They have to trust and respect you, and you have to trust and respect them. What is it that they're in this for, and do they care enough about the work that you do to respect it? Additionally, there has to be shared planning and decision making. You have to have a really good working relationship to say, wait, what are we doing here? What is the end goal? Why are we doing this? And importantly, there has to be a non-hierarchical relationship, meaning that I'm no important than you are. The physician here is equal to the occupational therapist. And boy, was that a learning experience for the physician. The physician is equal to all of us. We are all in this together. And we have to know each other's jargon and terminology. As I mentioned a moment ago, that conversation went completely sideways during the significant exchange. I have to understand what you're talking about when you and I are speaking so that I know that we're all on the same page. And last, measurement is important, as I mentioned earlier, because of the increasing need for alternative disciplines to prove their efficacy. So we have to find a measurement tool that can be adapted. What is important to me may not be important to you, but we need to use the same tool to measure both of those things, somehow be able to adapt them. And then one thought, as there are many different disciplines in the room today, is what is the right discipline to add to your team? So as you think about your project and think about what your ultimate goal is, what do you not have yet? And sometimes this is really limited by geography. It's limited perhaps by what the universities in your area offer educationally. And I want to encourage you to think about mentorship programs, fellowship programs, scholarship opportunities that would bring folks in, young folks with new ideas that would help you to flesh out your project and maybe see around some corners that you can't because that's their specialty. Make sure to frame the issue. Again, know that we're all on the same page, and remember to keep returning to that page. What is it that we're doing? And then also be willing to think outside the box. If you have a bunch of interdisciplinary folk in the same room, you're going to be outside the box. Thanks. Joy says I should ask if you have questions. Okay, I'm going to move along. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. It's now my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Suzanne Hanser to present. Dr. Hanser is the Chair Emerita and Professor of Music Therapy here at Berklee College of Music. She's also the past president of the World Federation of Music Therapy and the National Association for Music Therapy. Her individual National Research Service Award from the National Institute of Aging launched a research agenda to develop and investigate the effects of music therapy on pain, anxiety, physiological changes, indicators of stress, and quality of life. She has conducted randomized control trials on the impact of music therapy protocols in oncology, geriatrics, cardiac rehab, and family medicine. And she is the author of the New Music Therapist Handbook, co-author of Manage Your Stress and Pain, and her latest book, Integrative Health Through Music Therapy, Accompanying the Journey from Illness to Wellness, explores the use of ancient and contemporary music-based interventions in people who are suffering. In 2006, Dr. Hanser was named by the Boston Globe as one of 11 Bostonians changing the world, and she is the recipient of Sage Publications Prize and the American Music Therapy Association's Lifetime Achievement Award. So please welcome Dr. Hanser.
Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for putting all of these events together, and to my colleagues who are presenting such very interesting work. And I would like to depart from my original title, because as I've crafted this, I realized that I really was talking about how music transforms the meaning of illness. And not just wellness, but transformation, if I dare use that word. And I'd like to begin, as I like to begin every class or session I lead, with some music. So if you're game, just take a moment to put down your pens or computers and just take a nice deep breath and sit as comfortably as you can, and perhaps become aware of the left and right side of your body and see if you can find that balance as you sit. And I'm going to play some Debussy for you, La Fille aux Cheveux de Lin. I don't want you searching in your memory, oh, what is that song, as you hear it. But I will ask you, as you listen, to go inward and to notice what is going on in your body, in your mind, maybe even your spirit. So, here goes. Take a deep breath, and before you come back and join us, notice how you're feeling right now. And and begin to move your fingers, maybe your toes, get some energy back in your body as you rejoin us. So, welcome back. That was 2 minutes of music. I wonder if anyone experienced any changes. Do you feel a little differently than when I started? Anybody? Yeah? Feel differently? Great. Anybody notice a change in the body? A change maybe in your heart rate or your breathing rate? Anybody? Do you feel a little more relaxed in your body? Maybe you feel a little more excited? Many different ways to feel that in your body. What about in your mind? Did you find that your mind went somewhere different? Anybody go to a beautiful place? Yeah, oh, wonderful. Anyone to a memory, an association that you have with those sounds? Yes. Anyone experience something beyond, something a little bit attention grabbing, so that you were out of this room and really experiencing something else? Well, there are many ways to experience music. And indeed, there's a lot going on when we experience music. So first of all, the superior temporal gyrus is where the auditory system resides, and that's where it sort of all begins. We process the sounds first in the prefrontal cortex, and then when we're engaged with music, we're evaluating the sound and that sensory material in the prefrontal cortex, but we're also linking up to the insula, which is where we become aware of our emotions and our body, just as perhaps you did during that little exercise. So these things are linked up to determine our individual reward sensitivity to music, because we all respond to it differently. But there are some profound effects that we experience. So when you listen to music that really sends you a deeply emotional response, do you ever have that peak experience, that flow that comes maybe from engaging with music? Well, again, it starts in that prefrontal cortex, where we evaluate what's going on and look for memories, seek some connections with that music. And then the ventral tegmental area is activated, and this mesolimbic system, right under that center of our brain, the limbic system, there's a pathway that sends dopamine from the VTA to the nucleus accumbens, which is sort of a seat for reward and reinforcement. And it also there's also another pathway going to the anterior cingulate cortex, which is another area for processing this. It's an area that looks at emotion regulation and at executive function, but also cognition. And it's said that the cingulate cortex plays a role with chronic pain. So you see how this widely diffuse network, helped by the thalamus, which is helping guide these various pathways so they don't bump into one another, but work together to create an amazing experience through music. And fortunately, there's now an opening in Western medicine to integrative health, which says that indeed, thanks to some of this neuroimaging, which is giving us a bit of documentation as to what's actually happening when we listen to music, when we engage more actively in music, when we participate in some of the wonderful activities we just heard about, that all of this is connected to our immune function, to our health. Psychoneuroimmunology is linking up the psychological response to what's going on in the brain and saying, yes, that has something to do with how healthy we are. It has to do with wellness. And this holistic approach involves many of the things you see in that little person there, as well as music. Can you imagine if we had more music in our lives? Well, what I really want to tell you about are some remarkable people that some of our graduates here at Berkeley have encountered in various settings where many of you work and play. I hope you're not on the patient side. But this is Brad. He created this out of his experience at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, where he found that some of his medical staff were no longer saying, "Hi, Brad, how are you feeling? In for your weekly check, your blood draw." They were saying, "All right, let's see your counts. What do the labs say?" He was not a person, he was a number. But he created this to show us that he is something beyond the numbers. I think Brad's experience speaks for itself. A way to transform the experience of having cancer, being a number. These numbers create beautiful music that serve others. Here's another gentleman, Boston Medical Center, working with Dr. Maria Hernandez, who is also a Berkeley grad. And this man is in chronic pain. He's in the family medicine unit, and he is undergoing diagnostic tests. He's been there for a week, and he's been undergoing diagnostic tests. He doesn't know what his future will be. He doesn't know his diagnosis. He just knows he is in great pain. Working with Dr. Hernandez, she interviews him, finds out that he's a guitarist. They find a guitar, and he creates this song. Keep losing it.
My life right now is pretty much on hold. My time is spent waiting to heal. I feel stuck on an island, watching others sail by. Their lives moving forward, while mine is still standing by. Trying to find the music within the noise, the eye within the storm, a calm inside the tension, the peace inside the war. What used to be easy.
This is existential therapy. This is really working out the meaning of what I am experiencing now through this illness. And what a remarkable way to describe the eye within the storm, a calm inside the tension, the peace inside the war. That's trying to find the music within the noise. So I really think that much of what we do as music therapists is really trying to balance the autonomic nervous system. We're not always deeply relaxing people in that couch potato bliss, and we're not always energizing them and getting them up and dancing and creating. But I think that what we do best is bringing homeostasis. We bring that positive attitude, that positive psychology, if you will, I think music therapists, by the way, were the original positive psychologists, but that's my bias. And we can, in a very positive psychological state, bring this homeostasis, really help people through arousal. And in a very different disorder, I find this is quite a graphic representation of what Alzheimer's disease is and how it robs the brain of its function and of our humanity. And this is from York Henrik Jacobson and colleagues who looked at the brain and identified this area of musical memory, that red spot there, and found that area was largely independent of those areas where we see more gray matter atrophy in Alzheimer's disease and hypometabolism of glucose in a PET scan. And so you see these correlations here are near zero. That's the correlation between the musical memory region of interest and these other areas. Not so with the beta amyloid burden, but I think this is convincing evidence of why we see this massive response for people with dementia to music. And here's one of my favorite examples at Sherrill House with another of our wonderful graduates, Aiko Unuma. And this gentleman has dementia and depression, as you will see.
Yeah, wait me like this. Huh? Use your hand. Also keep it. Yeah, both your hand. And as well. You can do whatever you want. Okay. Maybe we can start with slow.
Here it is now.
Watch him carefully, please.
Yeah, here it is.
Oh, thank you.
All the way.
So we started
It sounds
to
great.
with her. Doesn't speak very much on the internet.
That's a lot more.
Okay, I think you get the idea. He runs off after the, no, he doesn't actually run out of the room. But you can see how this entrainment process of matching that person's inner rhythm, if you will, and guiding it very gently, inadvertently, and making a change, making a transformation perhaps in how he interacts with the world. So I did want to share very briefly a research protocol that has led to a whole line of research. Thank you for mentioning that, Dr. Allen. This protocol was designed for working with homebound older adults who had depression, actually clinical diagnoses of depression. And briefly, there was a home-based group. I made home visits. And a self-administered music therapy group. I spoke with them on the phone, advised them how to create some playlists, and let them go, let them try out these techniques over 8 weeks. What you see here is the profile of mood states. The higher the score, the more calm, and the lower the score, the more agitated. Both groups compared with a waitlist control and randomly assigned to one of those groups. Those music groups both improved significantly. They differed from the control group. And what you see, those little dots at the end of the graph, is a follow-up 9 months later. They continued to improve, particularly those people that worked on their own without a music therapist in their home. I hypothesized the locus of control was at work there. They took charge. They saw how music could help their mood, help their depression, help their anxiety, as you saw. Here's the main measure, the geriatric depression scale. And again, significant differences. But not only differences between the groups, we saw clinically significant changes in depression, such that this group of elders more closely resembled a non-depressed sample by the time we completed the 8-week protocol. And again, as you saw, maintenance of gains over 9 months. So here's one of my favorite little films, again, made by a patient at MGH, and created at their chemotherapy sessions. music therapist at MGH. So I've hit some of the major medical centers in the area here. I'm very proud, as you can tell, of the work of music therapists in our community. And I think I couldn't say it any better than, of all people, Pablo Picasso, who said it takes a long time to become young. We fortunate music therapists get to see these transformations. And I do have to say, I think music is one of the fountains of youth, because it brings us back to this carefree, fun time where we're childlike, where we're innocent, and life is good. So, thank you very much for listening, and I welcome your questions.
I just had a comment actually regarding the gentleman with dementia who's playing the drums. That's an amazing video to watch. But one thing I noticed was that he took a deep breath prior to starting to really entrain with the therapist.
Yes.
And I wonder too if the breathing sort of got him to be able to maybe keep the beat. That he had to let go of something in his breathing system. So I was just
Very
curious about
interesting.
that.
Very interesting. I can't answer because I wasn't there at that moment. I can say that breath work is a part of the intervention actually that I piloted in this research, where it's a cue for regular breathing. In fact, use that technique with women in labor and childbirth, having the music at different tempi, cue breathing, so that we could slow the breathing, make it more regular, and focus, point of focus in addition to the music. I think for him that the breath you hear is more like a sigh. It's kind of like that release that many depressed people emit when they just cannot muster the energy to do much of anything else. So I don't know about that particular example.
Yeah, so I wonder if the music actually sort of elicited the ability to have that sigh, which then enabled him to then entrain with the
Yes.
therapist. So
Great hypothesis. Let's test it. Thank you for that.
Other questions or comments for Dr. Hanser? Okay, thank you.
Enjoy lunch.
In a moment, and I'm going to ask Holly to help me here for a moment. In a moment, we're going to have lunch, and lunch is actually we're bringing lunch to you, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't hear I'm talking about wellness again. Stand up, stretch, get some fresh air, as well as continue talking with one another. We have a very diverse group here of clinicians, educators, healthcare professionals, policymakers, life science professionals, so on and so forth. So please continue to connect with one another. I'm taking a little veer here, and this morning we were lucky enough one of our big supporters, Mary Beth Bisson, has helped supported the expansion of music therapy services in the neonatal intensive care unit, and this was shown on the news this morning, and I'm just going to ask for your attention to watch it. I can't see it on here. Hold on.
Back at 7:14 this morning, the city of Boston has a great reputation worldwide for a variety of things, medicine and music being two of them. So it should come as no surprise that one of the city's top hospitals has teamed up with one of the country's best music schools to help make people feel better. Floating Hospital for Children at Tufts Medical Center is pairing up with the Berklee College of Music to assist the tiniest of patients with music as therapy in hopes of striking the right chord very early in life.
This is O'Shane. He was born at 30 weeks, 2 days. So he's been here in the NICU for about 10 days now.
Bonding with a premature baby can be a big challenge for parents, and Keisha and O'Shane Downs want to do everything possible to connect to their newborn. So the Floating Hospital for Children at Tufts Medical Center suggested a music therapist.
The music therapist came by and she had something that sounded like the ocean that kind of reminded him of the womb. They brought it up to me because they said it could help soothe him, help with his heart rate, help with digestion, with feeding.
The sights and sounds in a hospital can be unnerving, which is why medical experts feel music therapy can be a high note of recovery. Andrea Colleton is Director of Child Life Services at Tufts. The hospital has been fully in tune with music therapy for years and are seeing how it benefits the most fragile patients.
The research is showing that by, playing music for individuals such as neonates can really impact their growth and development.
Susan Bakuras is a licensed music therapist who just earned her master's degree at Berklee College of Music.
We use music to kind of help these infants continue going. So like how we use music to exercise keeps us going a little bit. Same thing for these infants.
Bakuras is a shining example of Berklee's music therapy program, which is the largest in the country and is chaired by Joy Allen.
All music therapists are musicians, and so we're using that power and that influence of music, but there's also that I want to use music to influence other people to improve their lives.
If you think just anyone can pick up a guitar, walk into a hospital and start playing, guess again. Music therapists are certified, highly trained, and the classwork is demanding.
Intro to psychology, abnormal psychology, developmental psychology, human anatomy and physiology are required. And then you have your music therapy course.
Because these babies are very fragile, you really need to be able to know what you're doing and do live music in the moment. Yesterday we talked a little bit about humming when he's on your chest. Have you been doing that at all?
When she was younger, Bakuras always wanted to be on Broadway, but later decided her calling was to play for a much smaller audience for a much larger reward.
It was even soothing for me, so I'm sure it was soothing for him.
And there's nothing better than the scene when a baby finally gets to go home.
We were all teary, all the nurses, the parents, doctors, me, we're all just so happy to have been a part of their journey.
Now, music therapists are also helping to train parents to keep the music going after they get out of the hospital with their babies, even writing songs to sing or play to the babies once they get home.
Thanks for watching. I do believe I can't see quite, but it looks like our lunch is set up now. Is that correct? Danielle, can you see his lunch set up?
Save with Spectrum Mobile and our Buy the Gig plan for
Hold on.
$14.
There we go. All right. This afternoon, we're coming right back at 1 o'clock, and we have some great work with those experiencing homelessness, work with military veterans, work with those living with Parkinson's, and also those living with aphasia as a secondary effect of having a stroke. So please make sure you do come back this afternoon. If you're on live stream, we will be starting at 1 o'clock. Thank you.